There we go. Good morning, everybody. How's it going? Let's see, is the chat working? There we go. Wonderful. All right. Oh, there's always technical issues. Here. Oh, we got to get the mic over here. That'll help. Is that better? There we go. Yeah. Unfortunately, this whole I'm a farmer thing is not a bit. We can make plants happy, but the technical equipment is another story. So, welcome everybody. We're just kind of it's been I don't want to say slow week in food poisoning news, but there's a little bit less breaking stuff to break down than there have been in some previous weeks. So we're going to talk farm updates because that's where I've been for a lot of the last few months, and I haven't done a lot of it on YouTube for some reasons we'll get into, but no, there's been a lot going on, so I wanted to show you guys real quick. We have some. Here's some of the veggies we're growing. This is a bitter melon. Uh, Fun story. Hang on one second. I also have. This is also a bitter melon. Uh, the bumpier, the kind of spikier one is kind of like a more Indian type cultivar. From India, South Asia. The bigger, smoother one is more of a Chinese type. And this actually kind of happens a lot with vegetables that are pretty widespread across Asia. In East and to some extent Southeast Asia, you'll get the cultivars will be kind of bigger and a little bit milder in flavor. They kind of tend to breed them for like just volume. And the South Asian cultivars will be smaller and really, really spicy or pungent, or just like they're really breeding for just maximizing the punch in your mouth. So that's kind of an interesting pattern. So we're growing these. The challenge, so these are pretty sturdy plants. The one challenge with them is they like a little bit less sunlight than we have. So every once in a while in the summer in North Carolina, you'll get just a couple weeks of cool, rainy weather in the middle of the summer, and these guys love that. Everything else that we're growing likes really hot, muggy weather, so everything else is like kind of bummed that the sun went away. But the bitter melons are like, yeah, we finally have some shade. So that's always fun to see. Um, so I think like in part of what you're doing in your so these are crops that are not really grown commercially at a large scale in the United States, never mind North Carolina. And so a lot of what this year is about is just trial and error, right? There aren't a lot of guides on how to grow them in the United States. And so you have to figure that out yourself. There's a lot of trial and error involved in this. And when you're doing a trial and error, you want to start with a very, very small plot and kind of like do it very minimalist style and find out what the issues are, as opposed to going like full bore and maybe invest in equipment and just inputs and fertilizer and stuff that you might not actually need. So that's, at least that's my approach, right? Is kind of start from a very minimalist standpoint. See how the crops perform in your weather pattern. Notice how they're doing when you have, a week of different weather, see what they do, and you learn and go from there. So that's a lot of agriculture, especially when you're doing something different. And especially in this case, because it's new crops, we're also breaking in a new plot and I'm working with a new team. So like you got to get the people trained, you got to figure out what the crops want. You like this one patch of land that I'm on, I'm renting it from a cattle rancher. And this plot hasn't had cattle on it before because it's like 1 acre, because you want a small piece to start with trial and error. This one piece is really small. So it wasn't worth it to fence it and put cattle on it. It's just too small to bother. So it's clean. It hasn't had cattle on it. But they have been managing it like a cattle ranch. They're doing some really regular mowing. I think they would take some hay from it. And so they have been, the way you manage your land on a cattle ranch, you want to have very strong grass. You want grass that can be eaten down repeatedly and grow back. You want to encourage the grass species that do that. You want to build a very strong root system so they're impossible to kill, which means you're going to have some crazy weeds. So that's been the number one thing we're working with this year. It's just crazy weed pressure, which happens. Charcoalatier asked, clean? What do you mean clean? Growing vegetables on land that had cattle on it last year, there's going to be poop. And you kind of want to avoid that if you can. So the vegetables I am growing are cooked. We're not growing like raw leafy greens on the ground because, those outbreaks we're having this year where everybody's like, ew, there's, what do you mean there's been poop on the lettuce? You don't want poop on the lettuce, and you don't want to grow lettuce and other leafy greens that grow close to the ground and are eaten raw. You don't want to grow that on ground that had cattle on it last year or this year, or even runoff from cattle land next door. So, yeah, that's what clean means. You want to have some clean ground for lettuce and leafy greens, and We're on a cattle ranch, so I will not be growing those on this property. That would be a crazy move. So we're growing more like I'm focusing on vining crops and things that grow on a bush that are above the ground and are cooked, like eggplants, bitter melon, bottle gourds. That's a vegetable in a lot of the world, so that's what we're growing. I wanted to just bring you guys through some pictures because I have been taking pictures. I will also try and record some video every once in a while on the farm, and it's just not good because like I'm actually working out there, and so that's where your mind is at. I'm not really in like improv mode. And it's also hot, and there are bugs always trying to get you, and so that's really what you're focused on. Or you have other people out there working with you, so you're kind of keeping an eye on how are they doing, um, both in terms of is the work getting done, but also like are they okay? It's hot out here. People die working outside in extreme heat all the time, and it's the South in August and July. Like we already had very high heat, 90-degree plus days, starting in May, and so that's not really a, like don't put people on the spot like that. Also filming when your team is at work. That's okay. I kind of feel like we've had a lot of social media discourse about like you shouldn't use your kids as content fodder. I think you also like if you have employees on a farm, you should not use them as content fodder either. They didn't agree to that. They didn't agree to be actors. They came to work on a farm. So, um, I want to hold off on posting people until like there's people who are like, yeah, I'm down with that, and then it's like I'm looking for people who have farm experience. So that's not the job they're looking for, right? Um, so that's interesting. So I want to take you guys through some photos. Hopefully this will let me share these photos. We're going to find out. No, we don't want that. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Ah, okay. So I have to be signed into my YouTube Farm to Tabor account to do the live stream, and I have to be signed into my personal account to to do the to show the photos. And so it's not going to let me do it. I don't think. Hang on, let me see if it'll let me sign in. Mm, See, if I sign into Google Photos in my personal account, which is where the photos are, then it might sign me out of the live stream. So let's not do that. What I can do is I'm see if I can just pull them up on my phone, my cracked farmer phone, and y'all let me know if you can see it. I'm gonna pull up the album. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, that one's not very good. Okay, that's all right. So you'll get you'll get photos like this. We had to go see a man about a tiller. This is not going to be very good, you guys. We have a tech issue here. So this is at the beginning of the season when you have to. You'll see the first step in kind of clearing up the weeds is you do some tillage. You want to kind of break up the established grass plants and sod that are there. So you have to go find there's folks around here who can rent you their tiller equipment. We can use that on the farm. So you just have to go and check it out and make sure it's like the right size and measurements and everything. Found some cool snail eggs. Neat. Yeah, it's not going to focus. Some like little jelly looking spheres on the ground. So these are photos from like back in winter when you're just kind of doing your field prep season. Okay. This is the plot like right after we tilled it. So you can see it's sand. It's just straight sand. So we got the grass weeds down, which is great. So if you've heard, the Appalachian Mountains are really, really old. They're ancient, right? So they used to be very, very large mountains, and then they eroded down to nothing. So where did they all go? Where did the Appalachian Mountains go? There's sand now. We live on top of sand piles that used to be the Appalachian Mountains. It all ground down into sand and then washed downstream, washed downhill. And so a lot of the East Coast, the flat parts of the East Coast past the mountains, are just the sand that came off the mountains as it eroded. So, and depending on where you are on the East Coast, like there's some places where like a lot of the South has red clay, right? So that's a different kind of soil type. But there are a lot of parts of the South that are just sand that washed off the Appalachian Mountains. Like they're just alluvial river deposits. So that's where we are right now. We're in the North Carolina sandhills, which is a big sand dune region or sand pile region. And so the soil here is not, it's classically considered to be bad soil. I think that's I don't think that's quite accurate. Any soil is good soil as long as you treat it the way it needs to be treated. If you try to farm it like it's black muck in the Midwest, you're going to have a bad time because you're doing the wrong thing for your area, right? That's not because the soil is bad. That's because you're trying to farm it wrong for what it is. So sandy soils can be really nice for root crops, right? It's soft. You know, you can easily push it around. Your root crops can easily expand, you know, like grow down and then expand. They can do that quite easily in sandy soils. And then to harvest them, you have to do some digging. Well, that's a lot easier to do in a soft, sandy soil than it is in a clay, right? So sandy soils aren't wrong. They're doing what they need to be doing. It's up to us to farm appropriately for that. Um, Sandy soils can also be nice for tree crops, orchards, because they really don't like it when water builds up and kind of gets puddly around their roots. You don't get that in sandy soil because the water just washes straight down. It's like a sieve. It just does not hold water. Um, does my farm deal with a lot of kudzu slash remnants of kudzu roots? Surprisingly, no. Okay, so this thing about like kudzu ate the South. Kudzu really likes to grow on roadsides. That is where you find it. That's kind of the only place that you find it. And so if you know the South from driving through it, you're going to think kudzu is everywhere. It loves to grow on the sides of highways because it wants full sunlight. You're not going to get that in. It wants to climb up trees, but it wants to have the full sun when it's growing out of the ground and first starting to climb. And so it grows at the boundary between forest and not forest, right? That's really the only place that kudzu thrives. And so if you're in an open field, it doesn't really like that, which is where I am. Um, and even that we have a tree line, right? Like we have forest and then we have field on the farm, but it's not a road. I don't know what it is. Kudzu loves roadsides, and that's kind of the only place that you find it. So again, if your only exposure to what the South looks like is you drove through an interstate, you're going to think kudzu's everywhere. That's the only place the kudzu is. It's kind of like traveling by railroad, and it really doesn't like. You need weak trees. So the thing is, like, it needs that roadside edge, right? It No, like it. I live here. It doesn't spread like that. Um, yeah, creeks and streams because they have that roadside thing, right? But on the farm, we've got that forest to field boundary and no kudzu, right? So it's not everywhere. That is really overrated. What we do have a lot of is Virginia creeper, which is native. It's related to grape, and we have a lot of smilax. We have so much smilax on the farm. Um, it's Smilax. If you live in the South, you've seen it. It's also edible. You can snap off the vine tips when they're growing in spring and cook them up like asparagus, but only do that if you know for sure what the plant is you're looking at. It's got really robust, like hard woody roots that it goes back down to in the fall, and those can get huge. Anyway, we have a ton of smilax on the farm. Yeah, also called greenbrier. Greenbrier is the devil. Greenbrier has a lot of thorns, and so anytime you go in the woods, it's trying to snag up your pants. Um, so if you think kudzu is bad, you haven't met Smilex. But the vine tips in the spring can be snapped off, and they make good asparagus. Again, only do that if you know exactly what you're snapping off in the woods there. Don't just eat anything out there. And the roots on Smilex are sarsaparilla. So if you've ever heard about people going, I need my sarsaparilla, that's the plant that it comes from. It's the roots of Smilax. And so it's actually a pretty good forest edible if you know what it is and can identify it and use it properly. I've been trying to get local restaurants interested in it. Local restaurants are really funny. And we'll kind of leave it at that. Every other business that you will ever talk to if you're a business owner is also overwhelmed. Just think about how overwhelmed you feel all the time. That's how other businesses are. Local restaurants are no different. And so they'll kind of talk about how much they're like into using local ingredients, but the reality is they're overwhelmed like everybody else. And just because a local ingredient is there and you brought it to their doorstep one day does not mean they're going to go, oh, here's how you incorporate that into a menu. So that's a sales part of the business. That's not my forte. I'll be straight up with you. I am all about growing the vegetables, and the sales part and getting people excited about local ingredients. Not my thing that I do. Always happy to work with folks who do that. But I think it's important to know what your strengths are and are not. Let's see if we have some other good photos. What do we got here? Here we are. Um, this one's fancy. So this is, we got the irrigation tubing. This is you need a little pipe to carry the water from your well to the farm. So this farm is set up with drip irrigation, and it's kind of funny because you have to install plumbing on an acre. It's not a small job, right? So there's a reason people are reluctant to install drip irrigation. They're like, I don't want to do it. It's because you have to install plumbing on an acre. But because we live in sand here, it can rain, and then a day and a half later, your plants are thirsty again because the soil just does not hold water. Um, and so you can either install drip irrigation or just spend your life crying. It's our decision, right? So we put in drip irrigation, and yeah, that's just the giant tube of that's the 1 inch pipe or tube. So that's kind of the main trunk that goes from the well to the farm, and then you'll have like smaller distribution tubes, but that's the kind of the super highway for the water. Um, can I eat lettuce again yet? I don't know, man. I'm not tracking that outbreak anymore. The main cyclospora outbreak was in iceberg lettuce, so I don't think FDA and CDC have called case closed on this one yet. It's going to be hard to say when the new cyclospore infections stop because you have so many people who are infected, and it takes a long time sometimes for the infection to show up. And then for people to decide to go to the doctor about it, like I got diarrhea and it's not going away. That can take, sometimes it can take people weeks to go like, okay, I need to go to the doctor, right? And so it's going to look like you're having new cases for a long time, maybe after the infection stops. So it's just going to take a while before we can call this one case closed is the best that I know. I've never really been a big iceberg lettuce eater. I think retailers like, your Taco Bells and your Burger Kings have already removed that type of iceberg lettuce from their menus. So like, I don't know, man. Like this is a farm updates live stream. We are not doing minute to minute updates on the cyclospora right now. I'm just like, yeah, that's cooking on the back burner. When it's over, they'll let us know. Merch idea: install irrigation or spend your life crying. Yeah, that's a message that the people need to hear. We got life on the farm, kind of in the woods next to the farm area. There's some deer parts. You live in the woods, you meet your end of the woods, and then your bones get bleached and sit there in the woods. That's fun. Let's see. Oh, I had to let's see. We had to. All right, the best way to plant vegetables, you want to start with transplants, right? Because if you plant a seed straight in the ground, the weeds kind of have a head start, right? So, especially with vegetables. So, I started as many of my seedlings as I could from seeds, like at home in seed trays, right? So we could transplant them out on the farm. So they get a head start over the weeds. They're already big when they go in the ground. That is a tricky process, I will tell you, because pretty quickly you run out of space to do that. We had a freeze where I had to move all my seedlings indoors. I had a little kind of DIY improvised greenhouse set up, but it was not enough to protect from a hard freeze, and so it gets frozen outside, and you have to bring all your seedlings inside. And this is the jankiest presentation. I'm sorry, guys, but you can see you got to bring them inside for a few days, right? And you have to rig up lights, and you lose a whole room to it. You don't necessarily have enough lights to do a good job, and so some of your seedlings are going to get janky and weak. So you have to move them back outside as soon as you can. It's it's not a good system. So I set up basically a low tunnel, so you can put little wire hoops in the ground and stretch plastic over it. Use bricks to weight it down. You can see right. I made like a little air tunnel exit, right? Because you want to have some airflow through there. This was a day when the weather would have been in the 40s about. And so you want to have that plastic cover to make it warmer inside there, but you don't want to trap the air in there because then you're going to cook your plants alive. So I made a little air tunnel. That's the inlet on one side, and then there's a vent on the other side. So you get air coming in one side, getting warm, and then leaving out the other instead of making a hot bubble. So that was crazy too, because I had to go out every couple hours and like readjust the plastic depending on what the weather was doing. It was incredibly high maintenance. And so you have to be, I had these I didn't want to set that up at the farm because I'm not there every day. So you can't be there every couple of hours, like fixing up the plastic and stuff. So I had that at home. And then you're at home fixing up the plastic every couple hours. So you can't be at the farm all day doing the field prep that needs to be done. So trial and error. It's amazing. Um, oh, here's the other side of the greenhouse. We're just going to have like a little pop open in the plastic. You can see the flats in there. As you can see, this is very DIY and improvisational. I would never say this is how you run a farm right. When you're starting out with trial and error, you know, like when I say you want to start out minimalist, this is what I'm talking about. This was like the absolute bare minimum it takes to do the job, because that's how you find out what else you need to do. Do not start from. I feel like there's a lot of guidebooks in agriculture that tell you you have to buy this and you have to have this equipment, and that might not actually be true. A lot of the how-to farm information and material out there is made by people who sell equipment. They are going to tell you you need stuff you don't actually need, right? And so, as someone who's worked in agriculture for a long time, I kind of have my own personal experience with it. Um, I'm, yeah, once you cover plants, the temperature control is very exacting. You can, if you have like 1 hour where it's super hot in there, you can kill 6 weeks worth of work. You cannot screw it up, right? And so you have to have those plants where you're living and working all day. Um, da, da, da. So yeah, you cannot screw around with greenhouses. The cool thing is there's a lot of acreage for rent here in North Carolina that already has a greenhouse on it because of the tobacco industry. Tobacco plants, you also want to start them in a greenhouse. And so you have all these farms with the greenhouse, and they've kind of moved away. Like a lot of these farms have moved away from tobacco. So they have an empty greenhouse, and the plastic might be shredded and needs to be redone, but there's a greenhouse. And so you can rent that acreage and have a greenhouse to start your seedlings in, which is really nice. Um, Sweet potatoes also, this is why so many tobacco farmers move to sweet potatoes, is because sweet potatoes also need a greenhouse to start transplants in the spring, and they already had a greenhouse, so it was a really good fit. Tobacco also does not need irrigation. I mean, it likes it, but it doesn't need it. And and sweet potatoes also do not need irrigation. And so if you have a farm set up for tobacco, it is also already set up for sweet potatoes. So that's why there's so much sweet potato farming going on here in North Carolina. Um, let's see, the sea of plastic in Spain and their farming. That would be a cool video. Um, yeah, a bunch of people just said, "Hey, wait a minute, we're going to make more money if we install greenhouses," and then they did, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, that's so crazy!" Yeah, that's what happens when people treat farming like a job. And the sea of plastic effect like really kind of freaks some people out. But I'll tell you, it reflects a lot of heat. It is a lot cooler in that area, so that's nice. And the amount of vegetable production that you get under plastic is so much higher than you get out in an open field because the plants are protected from the rain. I don't know how much rain they get in Spain, that part of Spain, but here that's a huge factor. If you don't have your plants getting rained on constantly because it's the south, if you don't have that, you're going to leave a lot of fungal disease behind. Um, and so that for us is a huge advantage. We can use greenhouses here in the south, and they've used greenhouses a lot in Florida. Um, Not for necessarily heat protection from the cold, though we can use that in winter. The big thing we can use that for is rain protection in the summer. And you often want to pair that with some shade protection. Yeah, if you have plants under plastic in summer in the south, they're going to cook. But if you put shade over that, and you can use shade cloth. You can use, I think with glass greenhouses, they just put lime wash. Like they just kind of whitewash the glass a little bit, and then it wears off over the season. So about when it starts to cool down, your glass is clear again, and so you lose that shade effect, which is really nice. Second, the merch idea: install irrigation or spend your life crying. Yeah, I mean, if you live in sand, it's absolutely true. Let's see. International farming in the Netherlands. Yeah, I don't know. I look at what the Dutch are up to and I cry because anybody could do that if they wanted to. The Dutch just actually want to, and everybody else. I feel like the farmers in a lot of the rest of the world, at least in wealthy countries, are just kind of like, why would I put in that kind of effort? You should just give me stuff. I'm just like, these are some of the farmers with the most resources, and they're just kind of like, no, give me more. I don't want to put in the work. It's wild. Let's see. Do you run shade cloth over the plastic? Yeah, in a lot of the South for a lot of crops you should. So that's kind of a thing that I want to get into more next year. So again, this whole starting from minimalism and then working your way up instead of like, I'm going to read a guidebook and do everything they tell me to. Um, Also, for these crops, there is no guidebook. That's the other problem in the United States. There's guidebooks for how to grow these things in India, in Latin America, but we have different weather and different soil. You kind of have to work it out for yourself. So this is the year of trial and error. So what I learned from this is which crops really. So I knew like cherry tomatoes and I suspected bitter melon would really benefit from shade cloth, and like this year has proven that to be true. The other thing is when I've grown these things before and it was a really sheltered site, like there's trees all around, and so you don't get really harsh heavy winds, you know. So I've had really flimsy trellises and they'll withstand 30-mile-an-hour winds because we just have trees blocking everything. Like you'll still see them like getting bashed around, but they're not getting the full force of the wind. So I've had really flimsy trellises in the sites I've already grown on in previous years take tropical storms just fine. The site that I'm on now is a lot more exposed. It's got trees on one side and then it's got just like field on the other. And so you get the full force of the wind. And that was a really interesting changeover. Like, oh, pepper plants also really benefit from shade cloth, but also we got a hot, dry wind coming from that exposed direction. Um, Basically, right after I planted the pepper plants, and it was on sand. And so the pepper plants, they already kind of go, ah, if there's too much sun. Pepper plants are a little bit of a forest edge crop. I kind of think of them that way. So I knew they were going to struggle with just the full extent of the sun. I was like, that's cool. We've got drip irrigation set up. We'll feed them enough water. They're going to be okay. They also got sandblasted with a hot, dry wind because it's sandy soil and we just took down all the weeds. So there is nothing stopping the wind from whipping up the sand. And the pepper plants were kind of like at the front edge of the farm and they got sandblasted, right? So that's, you know, another thing you run into with doing a different site. You know, the soil and the weather are pretty similar to where I was farming before in North Carolina. But, you know, just like the site exposure makes it really different. Sunflower walls, good idea. However, it was so early in the season, the sunflowers are not there yet. You can't, sunflowers need the same hot weather as peppers do. And so you don't have sunflowers that are big enough to protect your plants at that part of the season. Like we just kind of have to put up um, like a windbreak. Shade cloth over the plastic. Gosh, I wish I could explain it in words. So you know how you have a hoop house? Like, so somebody was asking, do you run the shade cloth over the plastic? It depends. Sometimes people just do shade cloth. So if you Google hoop house, you can just put shade cloth over those hoop structures instead of plastic and get yourself a shade structure. You can also put greenhouse plastic and then shade cloth over the top. It's kind of up to you. I would, in most cases, try and put greenhouse plastic and then the shade cloth over it because then you get protection from the wind and sun. If you only have shade cloth up, then the rain goes through and you get cool and wet, which fungus loves. I would not personally do that, but depending on the crop, it might work in your location. So, how about elder as a barrier? Again, doesn't leaf out early enough in the spring for that to work. You're gonna so this happen so the weather pattern we have here in North Carolina, I like to say the winters are English, the spring is Mediterranean, and the summer and fall is tropical. Right? And so we have a very cool, drippy English winter, and then most springs it turns very hot and very dry for about 2 months. Um, which, if you time it right, you can use that to grow Mediterranean crops that you would not think grow in the South at all. Like wheat can do okay here. Uh, not every single year, but a lot of them. You can get a lot of like your fragile vegetables that have to have a Mediterranean climate. If you can get them in a greenhouse and then pop them out in the field just in time for that hot, dry season, they'll be happy. Um, anyway, so that hot, dry season happens before trees leaf out. You know, like they're kind of just starting to grow leaves. The sandblasting happens before deciduous trees can protect you in our seasons. So you either have to have pine trees, like something, you have to have something permanent. And you can't just plant pine trees overnight and have them grow up. So we're going to need a plastic windbreak. That's what we're going to have to do. So if you go like by construction sites and they've kind of got that plastic semi-porous wall of fabric to just basically as a view blocker, that's basically what we're going to have to put up next year. Because shade cloth is a little bit too porous to block the wind the way you need to. Do we overwinter vegetable plants? Depends on the vegetable plants. So cold hardy vegetables, you can just grow them over the winter here. Like carrots, they do fine over the winter. Collards are a winter crop. They grow great in the winter here. Cabbage, it depends on so some cabbage cultivars are very robust. They can be frozen and they don't mind. Others fall apart. They're just like, oh, I can't believe you did that to me. And they will die and turn into liquid. Um, so yeah, you can grow frost tolerant vegetables here. Peas over the winter, I really like to grow them. I plant them in fall. You get a few peas in the fall, and then in the spring they're like, they kind of stop doing anything over the winter. They pause, but they don't die. Like they stay green, they keep photosynthesizing. And then once the days get warmer and longer in spring, the peas are like, here are your peas. Um, Growing fava beans over the winter here, that gets weird because they get root aphids, which you don't see that often. But like, every time I grow fava greens, at least fava beans, at least here at home, you pull the plants up and there's these bright orange little round aphids living on the roots. And the fava beans never really amount to anything, and I suspect that's why. Um, that's interesting. Oh, hang on, we have sorry, back to the the cruddy DIY plastic hoop house. So it looks nice in this photo. This is just inside the little low tunnel that I gave them. You can see lots and lots of flats. They're turning green. They're doing a great job. Let's see. Oh, my main farm vehicle is a Prius. For a couple of reasons. The first one is you can fill it up for like 21 bucks, like even with high gas prices. You can't beat that. You'd be amazed how much cargo you can fit in the back of a hatchback Prius. Um, for things where you need a pickup truck, I just rent one. It's okay. I only need that amount of cargo space for what we're doing about once a month because like the big stuff that you need to haul around is not going to fit in a pickup truck anyway. You have to get it freight delivered. So like having a pickup truck doesn't actually help you that much for what we're doing. Is everyone else suffering with heavy buffering or this? Okay. So once upon a time, somebody shot the internet cables that provided internet here, and then our internet went out. I hope it's not that. But that's the kind of broadband situation you're dealing with here. Um, hardier perennials than NC. Well, like there's perennials that survive fine over the winter, but they're not going to be bearing their fruit in the winter. That's not fruit time. So like blueberries will survive over winter and fruit in the spring. Raspberries, all your berries will do that. Um, Back to the Prius. The other cool thing about the farm Prius, again, our soil is really deep, soft sand, and so you either need a four-wheel drive truck to get traction, or drive a really light vehicle because a light vehicle it just kind of floats over the top. It's too light to get bogged down. So the Prius works great. There's a guy who comes to work for me occasionally who's got a Subaru that looks like it's left over from the 80s. It's four-wheel drive and it's lightweight, so it does great. Um, let's see. Oh, okay, hang on. We've got a few pictures here. This is my strawberry setup. So this is just a little trial and error. You can see there in the middle. Strawberries in a gutter system. Looked amazing in spring. The real trial is how does it do in the depths of summer when it gets really hot. So the water pressure in my drip irrigation system. So I've got kind of like an A-frame. We've got a few different tiers of strawberries. The bottom two are still doing great. The top two just did not get enough water pressure to last the summer. So that's why I like to do a very small scale experiment to figure these things out before I build 50 of those things. Let's see. Oh, this is from when you can see the bee in the center of that picture. This is from when the bees in the neighborhood. So there's a guy down the street who has some beehives, and bees are kind of like outside cats. Like you can give them water and they'll decide they don't want to drink that. They want to drink from somewhere else. And so his bees keep coming to my yard in the spring to get water because it's the hot, dry period in spring. And so his bees are like, I'm thirsty. And they often wind up at my place, which is fine because when my plants start blooming, the bees are already coming here and it's great. I don't mind. But they did start drinking from my faucet, which is unfortunate because if I need to use the faucet and there's a bunch of bees on it, then like, what I don't want to have happen is I just absentmindedly grab for my faucet or my hose and it's covered in bees, And so I put together a little watering dish for the bees to drink from. So bees, they don't want like a dish of water. They're used to drinking from little cracks that have tiny little water seeping out of it, like flowers, That's how they're used to getting their liquids. And so you have to give them like little rocks to stand on, and they like to drink. They really like to stick their head in the crack between two rocks. and drink out of there. So you got to give them a lot of little gravels to stand on and drink out of. Um, let's see. Oh, sorry, US and Brendan. It sounds like that's doing well. Uh, Once worked for a nursery that had a farm Nissan Leaf. Yeah, that sounds about right. Cut off the strawberry leaves after harvest. It depends. Like I'll kind of do that in the winter because you have a bunch of dead leaves, and I kind of just wait until winter to do that. I would like to be able to spend more time on it and like be really ultra tidy with it, but that's just not where we're at. Um, oh, okay. This is how we manage the lock on the farm. There's a few different people who work on this farm. Like one of the locks is for the owner, one is for the utility company because there's some power lines that go through it and they have to do maintenance sometimes. And one of the locks is mine. So if we lock them all together like that, that means any one of us can come to the farm when the gate is locked, open it, close it back up, and the other ones can still get in. Um, so this farm is interesting because the guy who owns it, I don't want to give too much personal information, but he's a 23-year combat medic veteran. And then he was like, I think I'm done with this. And he's mostly busy raising his kids. Like he's actually parenting. He's like a retired combat medic who's spending most of his time parenting. And so he's not hands-on with the ranch all the time. And he's actually okay with having other people come work on it. Like he's letting me rent some land because that's a good way for, if you rent some land to a veggie farmer, that's a good way for him to diversify without having to get all the equipment to farm vegetables, figure out the hiring. So it's a really cool symbiotic relationship. Um, and it's so funny because the way we talk about agriculture and like, I want to highlight people, the difference between like, like I've talked a lot about like, there's a lot of farmers out there who aren't doing a whole lot. And when I say that, people like what I find people's response is like, yeah, absentee landowners. The guy I'm renting land from is kind of, I guess you could consider him an absentee landowner, but he's actually bringing in other people to run their own stuff on his property. He's like kind of being a good host. And so I was like, well, the problem is not absent. Like, I think the problem that people know how to be mad about is absentee landowners. And as someone who works in agriculture, I'm like, it's the ones who are, that's not exactly the problem. Like if you own land and you are actually putting opportunity to work on that land, I don't care if you're there every day. This guy's busy parenting. That's why he's not there all day every day. Like that doesn't make you a bad person. That is not exactly the problem that I'm trying to like bring to people's attention. It is the habit of just kind of growing like bulk commodity crops because that's the easiest thing to do. Like to me, that's more of a problem. And you can do that managing your own property. Like you can be on your farm all day every day and do a bad job. That's more what I'm worried about. Like it's bad farming, period, no matter who's doing it or how it's being done. Good farming, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Like you can rent your land out to people and let them do stuff there. You can have all kinds of business partnerships. So I don't know, just the folklore that we have of what good farming looks like is really not accurate. It's a century out of date if it ever was accurate to start with. And it's left us really having a hard time being able to, you can't make agriculture better if you can't even talk about it. And we don't understand it well enough to talk about what's going on, And so we have kind of like this corporate versus small family farm binary that is not accurate, right? As a small family farmer, we can be bad at it. I've also worked with like, obviously not all big corporate farms are good, but there are some that do choose to do things right. And they have the resources to pay people right and treat the environment right. Like it's not cheap to do that. It helps if you're making money. And if you have economies of scale. So like we have a lot of binaries in the way that we talk about agriculture that I just do not think are helping us. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to help with is give people more visibility into how this actually works. And it's a challenge because people have a lot of preconceived notions that you have to unteach. Let's see. Product to sell year round. That's the goal. So we're doing our summer crops right now. We're just starting field prep for fall. I would have liked to start the field prep for fall 2 to 4 weeks ago. It's kind of crazy because you have to start your fall field prep at the height of summer. So it's July and you have to be telling yourself winter is coming. It messes with your head a little bit. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, our goal is to have, Yeah, folks are talking about fungal pressure and humidity and everything. That's why I'm growing Asian vegetables. So we have a lot of veggies from like East and Southeast Asia that love our weather. They actually like the weather that we have. I think a lot of the problems we have in US horticulture, we don't realize this, but a lot of the vegetables we are trying to grow are from desert and Mediterranean climates, like peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, um, like, and then carrots. You know, those like kind of cooler, rainy weather. A lot of the crops that we're growing as vegetables come from Mediterranean and desert climates. So if that's not your weather, you're gonna have a bad time. Oh, melons are a big one. Melons really like a Mediterranean climate. So a lot of the problems we're having in the U.S. produce industry is we keep trying to grow Mediterranean vegetables everywhere. How about we grow vegetables that like our weather? You know, and these are bitter melon. They're called that because they're bitter. They're not for everybody. But we have a eggplant really likes our weather. They love hot, humid weather. So, you know, we could use more eggplant and we would be able to do local food a lot more effectively in the southeast. You don't you don't think southern food and think eggplant, but it loves our weather here. You know, that's kind of funny. Um, let's see. Every once in a while, I have to drive to the city to get to the farm supply store. There's an agri supply in Garner, which is in the Research Triangle, basically. So I have to drive to the city to get to the farm store in a lot of cases. And I had a jerky cannon. I just thought that was funny. It's some kind of meat preparation device, and I just thought that was funny. Let's see. Oh, we're driving post holes. So this is like the saga of this is why I don't take a lot of photos on the farm because my hands are busy. Trying to I'm like driving in post holes and trying to get out a good picture of like, look, I'm driving post holes. You can't drive post holes and take a picture of driving post holes. That's crazy. I tried a bunch of times, it didn't work out. But I did get a picture of the after. So this is I don't know if you can this is a bad picture. But you can see those little white the posts all have they're green with a little white tip, and so you can kind of see that line of white pole tops. So it was the fencing for an acre. You have to drive it in by hand. You just like take a post hole driver and just poof, poof, poof. And I managed to put almost all of them in about 2 days. So I'm very proud of that. I wasn't too bad. Um, let's see. Yeah, Mississippi River. All you see is melon because it's river bottom land. Here's the thing: it takes a lot of fungicide to grow those things in humid weather, and then you're right by the river. I don't know if that's a good move. you know, that's because somebody was talking about go drive by the Mississippi River in Iowa and Illinois. All you see is melon. So I used to actually live by the Mississippi River. We lived in the Quad Cities, and we lived like kind of on the bluff overlooking the river. We were like a couple streets back from the bluff. Um, they weren't growing melon down there when we were there. That was the 90s. Um, so that's probably a new development. But like that stuff really needs a lot of fungicide to thrive in humid weather. And if you're right on the riverside, that's an issue. Is it still bitter after cooking? Yes. You can soak it in salt water and cook it with some other things that have a lot of flavor to kind of like complement slash cover up the bitterness, but it's still going to be bitter. Oh, here. um, here's the Prius and the cattle. We have one very curious calf checking out the Prius because they've never seen anything like that before. They're like a little suspicious. So those are the rancher who's renting the land to me. Those are his cows. They might also be his neighbor's cows. He like helps take care of his neighbor's cattle. Sometimes they'll be on his property. You know, they'll go back and forth. Um, oh, there's a lot of wheat. Like a lot of the farms near me are growing wheat. So this is it kind of in mid-spring. You can see it's starting to turn. It's starting to turn. It grows in green because it's a grass and it starts to turn yellow. You can totally see it. Yeah, it's starting to turn yellow there. Dun, 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 dun. This thing is a fence reel. So we're putting in a lot of trellis. Like you're putting in a lot of like wires and support wires on trellises. So you need, you can see the edge of the wire reel right here, that big round thing. That's a giant 100-pound reel of wire. You need to put that on a thing when you unspool it, or it'll turn into a sprite like a rat's nest. So I had to make the reel. The manufacturing quality on that reel was terrible. So I was just like so proud of myself for getting that thing together, and I had to take a picture. Let's see. We got some more pictures of the wheat. Let's see. Oh, we have this is one of the baby eggplants growing in the ground. We got them transplanted and they're doing okay. That's a little smaller than you want for a transplant, but if you wait much longer, then there's kind of a dance between planting things too small so they don't have a head start over the weeds and then planting them so big that there's a lot of transplant shock when they get planted. So you're, a little bit too big, a little bit too small. You kind of got some wiggle room either way. We got some raspberries. Oh, we got like a little tiny irrigation pump. This is putting some fish emulsion. Like you transplant your seedlings out, and then we give them a little bit of fish emulsion. That is a pump, so we can put it directly into the drip irrigation system. So you don't have to be like, and here's a scoop for you, and here's a scoop for you. Putting it up by hand, you can just put it directly into the irrigation system. One thing you want to do when you do that, you don't want your irrigation system to screw up and pump the fish emulsion back into the well. You don't want it to go backwards by accident, so you have to put valves on your well and everything to prevent that. That's fun. Let's see. Oh, this is cool. So again, I don't know if you can see this too well, but this is a little bird's nest. Most of the eggs, they're white with a little brown halo on them. So those are Carolina wren eggs. If you live around here, Carolina wrens are these cute little birds that like to build a nest basically anywhere. They'll build them in your mailbox. And then if you can see there's a little blue speckled brown egg in there, that's a cowbird egg. So the way Carolina wrens usually respond to a cowbird laying an egg in there is they just abandon the nest. And so this is an abandoned nest that we found. So we just chucked it into the woods because we don't need more cowbirds. That's a bummer about the wrens, but they went and built another nest somewhere else. So we're talking bitter gourd, bitter melon. It's people call it either, but yeah, bitter gourd, bitter melon. Depending on how it's anglicized. Oh, you have to take pictures of your vegetables so you can text them to restaurants and go, hey, do you want some? So we took some. This is an eggplant. There's a lot of crazy varieties of eggplant out there. This is an Indian variety. And so I took this picture and then sent it to, took this and sent it to a couple grocery stores and restaurants and everything. And I was like, shot reminds me of something. I can't figure out what it is. It's the claw aliens from Toy Story. It was like, I've been chosen. That's kind of fun. So these are little green, like you can see they've got cool little stripy veins on them. These are tough to grow and look pretty because they're so pale that any damage shows up very clearly on them. Somebody asked about the rest of the story. What happens if fish emulsion goes in the well? Then you have fish emulsion being pumped into your groundwater. It's just gross. Yeah, you don't want to dirty up your well water. What you can do is like if you fish emulsion, it's just fertilizer, right? It's not poison, right? But then you can like then you just have extra. Then you have nitrate in your groundwater. Like the amount that we're using would not really cause a serious pollution issue. It's just gross, and it's like, oh, that should not be there, So you don't be pumping stuff into your groundwater, folks. Let's see. Oh, okay. These are cucumbers. So early in the season, we grew some mini cucumbers, and they love being alive here. These are like organic cucumbers grown in like the subtropical South, and they look great. They have a hard time later in the summer, but note to self, we're going to be doing a lot of those come next spring. We learned that those really like it here. Okay, this picture is funny. We planted some pumpkins kind of later in the spring. Pumpkins kind of struggle here. It's hot and humid. I wanted to take a picture of the pumpkin seedlings, but the sun was so intense, like the gradient between the shadow and the sun, like you can't even really see the seedlings that well. So this is how the sun is out for us. Yeah. But the pumpkins are still doing well. I will show you why. Here in the South, we get something called squash vine borer. It's a moth that likes to lay its eggs in the squash vine. And so it eats the inside of the squash vine and then the whole vine dies, right? So we don't want that. So we put together an insect trap. So that little black thing in the middle is a plastic or rubber plug that's been impregnated with mating pheromone from the vine, from the squash vine borer. And so it's a hot singles in your area signal. And so all the squash vine borers go in there and get stuck on the plastic, get stuck on the sticky tape. Um, so that with a small plot like this, you can trap all your squash vine borer. How it usually works on a larger operation is like they just can't find each other to mate, and so then they can't lay eggs, right? But this is the hot singles in your area that keep squash vine borer from reproducing on your squash. So it's so far it's working out pretty well. I'm actually surprised. Yeah, my father's family were commercial fishermen. They lived to grumble about farmers' runoff. Yeah, it's so funny because I think people kind of put farmers and fishermen in a very similar category. They're like, ah, they're men of the blue collar food production. Uh, Farmers can really screw fishermen up if we don't do our job right. So we don't have to be friends. We have to work at that. That's not. Let's not take that for granted. Um, let's see. Oh, we've got okay. Here's an eggplant bush that's like really doing its thing. It's popping out eggplants. That's fun. Um, this is oh, this is bitter melon growing on the vine. So we got that. You can see like we've got kind of a whole little field of trellis there. And the grass is very determined. It is doing its best to grow back between all the bitter melon because it's alive and that's what it wants to do. This is a bottle gourd that you use for vegetables. Bottle gourd is a vegetable in a lot of like East and Southeast and South Asia. So that's so here in the South we usually just use them for like traditional old timey containers, but they're a vegetable. A lot of people eat those. So it's a great example of a veggie that actually likes our weather here, but it's not part of our regional cuisine. And I'm like, maybe we can make it that. I don't know. This is our pumpkin patch. The pumpkins are a little bit bigger in this picture. You can, it's not a good picture, but you can kind of see the rows. That's right before we put some more fertilizer on them because they're getting a little bit like full. These are okay. So this is a mild hot pepper from India. It's called Kashmiri. So that is the pepper that you use if you are like if you're from India and you want to get the pepper flavor without a lot of the spice, because not everybody in India loves super spicy pepper. So this is the pepper you use for that. That's good. Anyone experimenting with wheat or geese and annual veggies? Here's the thing: gooses shit. Geese poop constantly. Like we're in the middle of multiple food poisoning outbreaks because there was poop on the veggies. This is come on, guys. No, wheater geese are great for cotton because they like to eat grass, and cotton is not a grass, so they'll eat all the cotton and leave the grass alone. And then it's okay if they poop all over it because it's cotton. You're not going to eat the cotton. So that's what wheater geese are for. They are not for vegetables. Geese, I think, will also eat your veggies. So yeah, y'all can quote me on that. Gooses poop all the time. This is fun. Okay, so those green striped eggplants I showed you earlier. So eggplant, we usually, oh yeah, the seas around Denmark are dying from farm runoff. The North Sea is having a tough time with fertilizer runoff. Those green eggplants I showed you earlier, we usually harvest eggplant when it's really mature before it ripens. That's what normal eggplant is. So you can see that bright yellow one is one that we didn't catch it in time and it ripened. But these are the same variety. The green striped ones are like before they turn ripe. That's when you want to pick them. And if you wait too long and they mature on you, they turn like bright yellow. They kind of look cool. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Oh, this is okay. This is a messed up little eggplant. Eggplants will just grow funny. Like every vegetable will grow funny looking sometimes. I took this one so I could text it home and go, look, it's we finally did it. It's a hybrid eggplant peach emoji. The secret ingredient is love. That's why I took a picture of that because I'm 12. Oh, my hazelnuts are going to bloom next year. Finally, these are male flowers. These are the pollen flowers on hazelnut, and that's how you know they matured and they're going to start bearing nuts finally. These are little catkins, and they grow them the summer before, and then in the spring, really early in the spring, they start dropping pollen. So this is a huge moment for me personally. This is at home. This is not my farm rental plot. Oh, okay. So the next picture I'm going to show you. So this also, bitter melon, we also pick this before it turns ripe. This is a green, like unripe bitter melon, because when they turn ripe, that's what they look like. So what they do is they turn bright orange and they split open like kind of like a flower. And then the seeds on the inside are covered in this like really sweet red jelly. I have heard that the jelly might not be good for you. So, you know, use with caution. If you do eat it, you want to like scrape the jelly off and then spit out the seed. And don't eat a lot of them, and maybe don't give them to your kids. But that's what happens to bitter melon when you leave it too long. It ripens all the way, turns bright orange, splits open, and drops these like red, juicy covered seeds all over the place. And then they grow the next year. Ask me how I know. Um, let's see. I took a little video of one. That's the whole thing. Um, yeah, that's a bitter melon that went on too long. Let's see. Oh, these are fun. So this is a snake gourd. This is another vegetable that like really loves um, hot, humid weather. They call it snake gourd because that's how it looks. This one curled up on the ground and just kind of got a little funky curled up shape, and it looks like a snake. Um, these are scary if you're working the farm and you don't know what these are, and you see one out of the corner of your eye, and you're like, bah! It's a snake. So I have to tell people if they're new and they come to the farm, I'm like, there's going to be things that look like snakes. They're not. This is what it is. It's okay. Oh, you can see in the background um, that white stuff up there. That's shade cloth. We got some shade cloth on our cherry tomatoes. It's still too late in the season for them. It has to be, those tomatoes have to be torn out. But that's shade cloth. That's shade cloth without plastic underneath it because it's for tomatoes, which are kind of okay with getting rained on. Snake gourd is cool. So snake gourd basically cooks up like zucchini, except you know how zucchini gets like really wet and mushy and soggy in the middle? These don't do that. They're kind of hollow in the middle. And so you just get like the kind of like the crunchy al dente outside without the mushy stuff in the middle. I really like snake gourd. It cooks up really well. It's a good summer, it's a good sauteing and stir fry vegetable. It looks cool. I grew a cultivar last year that was paler green, and they got 6 feet long. So you can grow them, but you can't take them to the grocery store. They're not going to fit on a shelf. So I got a cultivar that's kind of like smaller and actually transportable. So that's what these are. They're doing pretty well. We don't have quite enough to actually bring to the grocery store. This is like a trial run. Like, hey, does this trellis approach work? That kind of thing. Yeah, I think these are really easy to incorporate into like standard US cuisine. I think we should do that more. So snake gourds, they're good. Let's see. I wonder what ratatouille that's made with snake gourd would be like, because like ratatouille is made with a lot of watery vegetables, and you just cook them and they turn into it gets really wet and mushy, and I don't think it's very good. So I'm wondering what would happen if you made it with like a snake gourd instead of zucchini. I think that would be good. We should try that. Oh yeah, someone says I'm gonna try planting cucuzzi gourds next year because I'm done fighting squash vine borer. So, we have bears. This is how we found out. So you can see there's a next to my thumb, there's a big bear track, and then I'm pointing to a smaller, lighter bear track from a baby bear. So we have a mom and children, so that's fun. Okay, that's all I got for today. We were going to talk about being normal about farming on the internet. I'll wait for a different day. You've seen the veggie pics. We don't have time to get into it today. The online culture of like being a farmer on the internet is really interesting, and I don't like it. The end. So um hiring folks and just like interacting with folks from a blue collar background, like, even nursing, construction, experienced farm workers, veterans, they kind of understand what we're doing here. I'm like, I literally just want to grow veggies. Folks from a white collar background, I feel like they're kind of looking for a cult leader. And I'm like, I can't do that for you, man. If I were good at handling people's feelings, would I be working with vegetables? No. So, oh yeah, it's funny hearing about greenhouse stuff. Yeah, the plants under solar panels. I see bits and pieces about it. I need to deep dive more into that, because not every plant is going to thrive under solar panels in every location. I think that could really work for a lot of crops in our area. Yeah, the idea of having time to be a farmer on the internet says something about experience and expectations. It's really interesting because I have so many people kind of a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about, I want a farmer to be someone who does all their own work themselves, and they're in there with their hands all day, all the time. They're living their farm. That's what people want. But at the same time, so many people expect me to just be able to drop everything and go to a meeting or do something online for them. And you're like, both of those things cannot be true. What do you want? Because that second thing, when you're looking for a person who can just drop everything and go be a farmer somewhere and like represent the rural viewpoint, you need landed gentry who doesn't have anything to do for that. Have you thought about this? Um, so that's interesting. So I'm just and a lot of people look to farmers to provide like deep moral guidance, and that just seems really inappropriate. Like, you know, um, the way you get to be a farmer is, in most cases in the U.S., is just having wealth, and so that's who we're looking to for moral guidance is people with property. And I'm like, that's kind of betraying who we are as a country more than we think it is. And that's kind of all I have to say about that. So we have a really long-standing, interesting, weird culture of who we think farmers are, what kind of person we expect them to be, that is not necessarily in line with reality. And then you add the internet to that, it's weird. There's there's so many expectations that like just farmers are supposed to be prophets, and also just wanting a lot of personal attention from farmers, and you're like, deep moral guidance, lots of personal attention, ready to drop everything and attend to your spiritual needs. You're not looking for a farmer, you're looking for a cult leader. And we'll end it there today. That's so interesting. We have a really bizarre culture around farmers, and people think it started with the internet. It's certainly grown there, but it does not start there. It has really deep roots, um, and it's weird. The end. It's a job. It's just a job. It's not more than that. It's not less than that. It's a job. And if it's a job, that means you can do it badly. Means you can do it well. Um, but like every job, there's people who are good at it, people who are bad at it. And just because the job is important doesn't mean I personally am important because I do that job. Um, I mean, just imagine if somebody were a doctor and they said, medicine is really important. Like everybody has a moment in their life where you're going to die pretty quick without a doctor at some point for most people, right? Um, Doctoring is important, right? It is a very important job. But if you had a doctor who is running around going, I'm a doctor, and that's an important job, you die without us. And therefore, that means everything I think and say and do is right. And you have to listen to me. We would not go, wow, that's a real traditional, authentic doctor. We would say, that's an egomaniac, you know? And yet for agriculture, we accept that. That's crazy. As someone who is a farmer, I think the way we treat farmers is kind of nuts. And it's actually kind of uncomfortable, and I think is going to encourage the worst impulses of anybody in that position. So, well, it seems that you clearly haven't met a lot of MDs. So my mom's a nurse, right? So a lot of doctors start to get that. And what do? The insurance companies cut them down to size. Nurses often cut them down to size. They keep trying to get like that, and we do something about it, don't we? We have malpractice. We know what malpractice is, right? We sue people for that all the time because that's what you have to do for a profession that is, kind of tends to get like that. But we don't have that same sense of, oh, maybe egomaniacs need to be controlled if they're in agriculture. Then we're like, oh, okay, they must be right. That's kind of crazy. Um, yeah, a lot of good critiques of the medical system can get lost in that. Someone had a question: overfeed dry wheat that is not fit for. Oh yeah, so most of the wheat in North Carolina actually goes to livestock feed, which is kind of wild. So actually, I think I was working with a farmer to see if they could grow some wheat that I could like then bring to a mill and get processed into flour for local to make local grain, because that would be nice and an obvious thing we do. We can grow a lot of wheat, we can make some soft wheat flour, make some biscuits. That would be nice. Come to find out, there may not be a single grain storage bin that's like rated for food for human consumption in Eastern North Carolina, because all the wheat is grown as a cover crop. And then if there's grain from it, they're like, awesome, we'll feed it to the chickens. So yeah, absolutely, we feed wheat to livestock. And like the main livestock grain is going to be corn, but wheat grows in a different season. It's like a crop rotation thing. You plant it in the fall here, and it grows over the winter. It keeps your soil covered and protected over the winter, and then you harvest in guys. All right. Well, I think that means it's a good time to perhaps be done. Hopefully, when the live stream goes to um, like to once archived, once it's posted on YouTube as a normal video, maybe the buffering won't be an issue there. I don't think so. So, good luck to Google. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for logging in. Everyone have a good one. Thanks for coming for farm updates. Y'all have a good one. Enjoy. Bye.